All right, we're now in the fifth section of our seminar today, our seminar number 5 on soul, person, functioning, and agency, and go back to the biblical references, this time to look at biblical imperatives and to think about the related character strengths and actions that would go along with being able to do these imperatives. So let's go back to Acts chapter 17 and verse 27 to 28. And this is the one that is Paul, again, who's talking about seeking God and perhaps groping for Him. And He's not far from any of us. For in Him we live and move and exist. And what biblical imperatives are you seeing in that particular passage?
Well, this one reminded me of 1 Chronicles 16, look to the Lord in His strength, seek His face always. So, yeah, the imperative of that we should always seek Him and look for relationship with Him.
Okay, so there's maybe also along with that, what kind of implied character strength would it take to be able to do that? Seeking.
Perseverance.
Perseverance. How about diligence as well? Self-discipline maybe. But yes, that active work there. Other imperatives?
Well, the last part of it about, though He is not far from each of us, for me that would also be trust.
Yeah.
Trusting that that's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. His nearness.
Mm-hmm. And also hope, because knowing that how we feel is not dependent on His constancy and His steadfastness.
Mm-hmm.
So that's hopeful.
It's not dependent on our constancy, but He's always active. And
Yeah.
working.
Did
Yeah.
I say that?
Just clarifying. Okay, so there could be a peace that comes from knowing that He's always present.
Assurance.
A sense of assurance. Maybe there's a certain amount of working of our humility by a recognition that we need Him always in our lives to be there. All right. Anything else?
Maybe this is taking it a little bit farther than what Paul was trying to say here, but we are His children, just as parents are very involved, or I'm very involved. I want to and desire to be around my child, and I also understand that God, my Father, is very involved and interested in my life. So we are His children in that sense.
Right. Yeah, so maybe in an implied way, that although it's a more broad sense of children.
Yeah, exactly.
As Christians, more specifically thinking of, since we are adopted,
Mm-hmm.
how should we act as children?
Okay.
As His children. Is that kind of what you're saying? How should we?
Yeah, how do we understand that involvement of His children? Be aware of it. Awareness maybe would be the character.
Awareness, yeah. So since I am His child, He's adopted me, how do I need to be experiencing life, reminding myself of His presence always,
Yeah.
trusting in that, like some were saying, having hope that He's always there. Yeah.
I think for us as mentors also, we can look at this as love, because for in Him we live and move and exist, and we are His children. And God is love, and so that enables us to be loving, and kind, and gentle.
Yeah, so there's a big difference between just thinking of God's presence and thinking of His loving presence.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we do know God is love, but some people may not associate the presence of God always with something positive. They may feel like He's watching and going to punish, getting ready to, in some way, we would say, zap them, So being able to hold on to his loving presence.
Well, and for us as mentors, to model
That,
that.
to model that loving presence. Yeah, very important bridge, isn't it? We are not God, but we can be like him in some ways, in terms of the communicable attributes of God. Although we don't have love to the extent that he has it, we are able to love to some extent. And as we love consistent to the way he does, we are providing that model, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think I was thinking also kind of in the sense of being loved by God gives me the safety and security to be able to express that love to others, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, and that's a point to remember too. While we are thinking about the client having a soul person and their brain and body functioning, and all the different aspects of both of those, we have the exact same thing going on with us. So we are also in the process of being strengthened in those ways. We have to have experienced his love in a particular way to be able to convey it to others. And sometimes it exposes areas within us that need to continue to be strengthened and grow more so that we can be better at mentoring. So that we can. Okay, Romans 6:5. If we have become united with him in the likeness of his death, certainly we shall also be in the likeness of his resurrection. What might be some biblical imperatives coming from that?
Faith and trust, I guess.
At least implied, yeah.
Yeah, because of the certainly we shall also be in the likeness. I don't see obvious imperative.
Yeah, there's not necessarily a command, is there? But there are things that need to be present to be able to maintain that particular belief that he's promoting here or he's presenting here. To be able to hold this, it does require a certain amount of trust and hope, doesn't it, as you're saying? And trusting that he is actually doing that transformative work.
It also, I read into this that it's a two-way street. I mean, he's sanctifying me, but I have a part in that sanctification too. By reading the Bible and seeking him, and so there are certain levels of sanctification, right? And it's
growing.
not just growing, I guess. It's so that for me, an imperative is that there's some responsibility on my part to make that.
And we know that also from other passages as well. That even though he may not tell us a particular thing to do, that's behind it. There is a cooperativeness of things that we need to be doing as well at the same time.
I see also which talks about being united with him in a death like his. No one goes willingly to death. So since it's kind of counterintuitive, and sometimes we have to be counterintuitive to our fleshly desires, and like his death, die to our flesh,
So if Paul says, put to death the deeds of the body.
Right.
Of course, he's not saying that all of our body is always sinful.
Right.
Because it was created by God. But he is saying something specific that needs to be done that we do too. We do a certain amount of putting to death. I think you're saying that, right? That we have to not just sit back, but we have to be willing to put effort into it.
Yeah.
And I think that brings up humility too. We have to be humble. by being submissive and obeying requires a bit of humility too, don't you think?
Yeah, sure.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, then in 1 Corinthians 11:1, something more direct is happening here, isn't it? Be imitators of me, just as I am also of Christ. What imperatives are you hearing in that passage?
Be with me?
It's a command, isn't it?
Yes, go ahead.
Mhm. This one is more directly stated. What does it take to do that, though?
Is obedience a virtue?
Well, it involves certain things to be able to do it. Like, it involves humility again, doesn't it? We see what needs to be done, and it's done for the reason, let's say, God has said it, or it's pleasing to Him, and we could be resistant to that.
Self-control.
Yeah, so it takes humility, self-control. Yeah. Well, and again, maybe what you're saying, I think before, Russ, is that we have to put effort into it. This is something we can identify that we have to actually do some things.
Right. I would also add to that, just understand what was the lifestyle that Paul says when he says, imitate me as I'm imitating Christ. Should I not maybe look into how Paul lived his life and what sacrifices he took?
So to fulfill that command, to imitate Paul, means there needs to be other actions that are taken. I think what you're saying is that studying the life of Paul, looking at how he taught, what he did, is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Understand.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What are we really imitating here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the words in your TPR book on 97 of the virtues is knowledge, so that would kind of fit with knowledge.
Mhm.
Okay, virtue of knowledge.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that would. Yeah. That's right.
Like Peter.
Anything else? Well, diligence, things like that too, would be applied. We mentioned that to some extent already. Staying with it. Okay, so 1 John 2:6. The one who says he abides in him ought himself to walk in the same manner as he walked. Maybe we've got some kind of comparison here with the last one, similarity here, right? What are you seeing imperative-wise here?
Just be like Jesus. There's that the ought is the imperative.
Mm-hmm.
I see a certain amount of, you can measure, I can measure my relationship abiding in Christ as I perceive myself living as Christ lives. So when I see something that's contrary in my life, then it should be a red flag in a sense, you know.
Mm-hmm. So this takes a certain amount of self-awareness,
Self-awareness, yeah.
willingness to, maybe with humility, to assess oneself.
Yeah.
Am I being similar to Christ? A willingness to be consistent with that, and be in the diligence of keeping that in mind, being mindful
Mindful. Yeah.
of wanting to live consistent with Him. Faithfulness.
Mm.
So he's saying, do what you say you're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe forgiving when we don't live up to that standard, so being able to forgive ourselves and others.
Right, so there's another thing to imitate. Do we have examples of Jesus being forgiving? Of course we do, yeah. So when people fall short, for instance, Peter, right? Peter made some really difficult, very bad kinds of judgments and abandonments of Jesus. And Jesus was very forgiving toward him.
And I like this word also, I always have to refer to this Yiddish word, bearing others.
Bearing with others.
Yeah.
And with ourselves, too.
Colossians, yeah.
Mhm.
What page is that again?
96.
Okay.
That's, I think, and I might have mentioned this before in another seminar, but taking 1 Corinthians 13, where love is broken down into different things. Love is always patient, kind, and never keeps an account of wrongdoing, always hopes, trusts, those kind of things. And we think about God being that way with us. We can think about us being that way with others. But we can also think about being that way with ourselves. So if we are imitating God in specific ways that love kind of, aspects of love, then practicing those kinds of things toward others and believing those things about His way of relating to us and then treating ourselves in a similar way.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about this, to walk in the same manner as He walked, I don't know how it immediately impacts you, but I don't tend to think about that including as much my own self-care or my own taking care of myself in some way. But it is very much a part of that. Why would Jesus go to sleep in the back of the boat? Why would He go off into a quiet place? You know what I'm saying? He demonstrates, in other words, the acceptance of human limitation and takes care of Himself.
That's right.
Now, His disciples were a little troubled. He slept while it was storming, right? but He did acknowledge His tiredness. All right, so we have our last passage here, 2 Corinthians 3:18. But we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror, the glory. It's next to the last one. The glory of the Lord, being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as from the Lord the Spirit. So, in that 2 Corinthians passage, commands maybe or implied imperatives.
I wrote down going with the Spirit's transforming me, as He's transforming me, I just kind of go with it.
Yeah, well, maybe that's that same idea of passive obedience.
Yeah.
Where maybe in some sense I'm commanded to be, passively obedient to the things that are happening to us. Does that fit with what you're saying?
Yeah, sure. Be cooperative.
Yeah. Other maybe implied kinds of imperatives. We start to get maybe a repetitive kind of thing happening here. I think I might have mentioned last time, it seems faith, hope, and love really come up a lot in terms of, if we think about what it takes to really carry out some of these imperatives.
Yeah, compassion. Because if we're looking at the glory of the Lord, He's very compassionate.
So you're looking at maybe specific character qualities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that might fit again with doing this, what the Bible talks about, realistic assessment of ourselves, or good self-awareness of which character qualities do we see in ourselves that are already strong and we're doing well with and we can use, but which ones do we see the need to continue growing more in? Which would bring more of that transformation about more holy. Anything else from that one? Well, the final one, and I thought it was before, but now it's the final one here, 1 John 3:2. Beloved, now we are children of God, and it has not appeared as yet what we will be. We know that when he appears, we will be like him, because we will see him as he is. Thoughts about what's implied here, being commanded?
Seek to know him better and to know him more.
Yeah. And by doing that, there's another benefit, isn't it? That we are coming to understand more of what we are going to be like and are becoming. There's a sense in which we're being commanded, or maybe it's implied, that we need to trust, even though we have no prior experience of something. You know, we had no prior experience of being actually in his presence, but we are being told, in a sense, to trust this.
Yeah, but we do know he's a promise-keeping God. We know this from biblical theology. So what he says, he will do.
Yeah. That can be used when we have doubts, right? We can go back to that. Remember that he's a promise-keeping God. He will bring it about. Anything else you're seeing in this particular passage?
It kind of goes along with the trust. My hope and my faith, like you said before, is that I will be transformed. So hope and faith again come up. My list here.
There's another one too that I was thinking about in particular with this one, and that's joy.
Joy. Okay.
I don't know, we haven't talked much about that one. How it could be joyful as we consider or meditate on this passage, how we could be encouraged in that character quality.
You mean to be joyful?
Yeah, to increase our joy. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control, and those fruit of the Spirit. Do we consider joy? And what would that look like, you know? How can I be encouraged to be more joyful? By thinking about, when I see him, I'll be like him.
It's
To
like-
put a smile on your face, right?
Yeah, it's like an anticipated joy, and from that anticipation is a natural development of joy.
That's good.
Which in itself leads to peace, I guess, then. We have peace knowing that this is going to happen.
Yeah, so then we could have a similar kind of attitude as the Apostle Paul, I think I mentioned earlier in Philippians, when he says, I'm torn between these two, to go and be with the Lord, which is far better, but it may be best for me to stay and help here. How often do people, have you heard people say, when somebody says, well, how are you doing? Well, I'm still alive, but they say anything that's, it's a better option than the other. But really, when we think about it, what is the better option?
Right.
Paul's saying his better option was to go and be with the Lord. And do we drive any amount of joy in thinking about our own demise, so to speak? It may seem like you're saying counterintuitive with other things. I'm going to be counterintuitive.
Right.
That we actually can have joy with the thought about being in his presence and being like him. I think we'd say yes, of course, but then we also have to realize we have to die to do that.
Yeah.
And we don't, I think part of it too is we don't know how we're going to die. So that's kind of a unnerving thing. What's it going to be like, the process? We all probably, if we were honest, would say, wouldn't it be great if I just go to sleep and don't wake up?
Yeah. Just right away.
Yeah.
I remember from an early age, I used to pray for Jesus to come and take all of us to just, for the resurrection to just happen, because I could not bear the thought of being alive when my cat died.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wanted everybody, cats included, to go all together so that we could just already have that joy.
Yeah.
And that, I was 11, I think, when I started, and I still do that, like as an adult. I'm just, can we just not do this pain anymore? This
Yeah.
all together.
Yeah, right.
Go. Minus this whole death thing. And yeah.
So isn't that the Maranatha kind of word from quickly?
Yeah.
Deliver us in a sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know we're coming close to the end of our time. I appreciate your comments. I want to offer a few more verses here just to think about, and then we'll close. I appreciate you guys have hung in there with us today, always. Some thoughts about or concepts related to core attitudes or conditions. Things that we can keep in mind when we work with people. One of those is in 2 Corinthians 5, 16 and 17.
2 Corinthians?
5, 16 and 17. We regard no one according to the flesh. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away, behold, the new has come. So if we think about a core condition of unconditional positive regard, and especially if we think about working with Christians, we can think about, not only do I know that this person is someone I need to value because they are beyond whatever behavior or problems they're having, but literally for the believer, I should no longer regard this person according to the flesh. There's something so significant that's happened in the new birth that I should not regard them. We're talking about unconditional positive regard.
Mm-hmm.
I should no longer regard them because of what I see in their sinfulness or their sinful desires or their problems. I don't ignore the fact that they're there and I should help them to overcome them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's even a stronger push for us by what Paul's saying in this one. And maybe a way to look at ourselves, if we think about self-concept, to no longer regard ourselves according to the flesh. How easy it is to get caught up in our own kind of being down on ourselves. Yeah. Another one is Hebrews 10:14. By one offering, and as Jesus himself offering himself, by one offering he is perfected for all time. And then the rest of it is, those who are being made holy or being sanctified.
Mm-hmm.
So here again, looking at our attitudes toward relationally, and the ones we talked about, the three in particular of empathy and positive regard or genuineness, that keeping in mind that when God works in a person, we have biblical evidence that he is perfected for all time. Some aspect of the person already and then there's other aspects, and we know other parts of the person are being made holy. Just more confirmations of our thinking about how to think about people. And then relationally, Hebrews with Christ, Hebrews 4:15, and he is not unable to sympathize with our weakness. In other words, Jesus is able to sympathize with our weaknesses because he himself was tempted in all things just as we are. So thinking about relationally with Christ and imitating him and our sympathizing, and we would say here not sympathy in the way I was mentioning it earlier, but in order to be able to acknowledge weakness in people and be able to be compassionate in the things that they're struggling with. Again, these two have been about focusing on more broadly on relationship. And we wonder, well, Apostle Paul was so good theologically, and so much able to think through things at a very high level, and it's sometimes challenging to follow him. I think Peter had the same thought about Paul, if I remember correctly. And some things are difficult, But we then can see another side of Paul when he does the end of certain letters and talks personally about different individuals, Epaphroditus or ask somebody to bring a cloak for me and that kind of thing. But in 2 Corinthians 6:11, and to a church who he had so much difficulty with, he says, spoken freely to you, our hearts are open wide. And then later on, the rest of that is that, and likewise exchanging our open wide hearts to us. And so, with our work with other people in character mentoring, in the genuineness aspect of it, we open wide our hearts, in a sense, to other people, and let them see us, our real selves, our real persons. And as we do that, we don't inappropriately self-disclose, but we're not just a therapy machine. I mean, obviously I'm not doing therapy, but we're not just a mechanical mentor with persons who are practicing caring for others. Any thoughts that you might have, final thoughts? Well, let me mention our last one is coming up, the Mentor Leader Seminar number 6. We always keep in mind everything that we've been looking at so far. I know that some of you are going to be, or already have begun, teaching other people as a very practical way of using this material to train other mentors. And our last Mentor Leader Seminar is where we are getting very specific and practical about the information, let's say, that's in here about how to teach other people with the lectures. And so it's going to be, I feel, a little bit different than the ones so far. We will be look at theological doctrines of perseverance and glorification. We're looking at some Bible passages related. But when it comes to the other material about person and character concepts and practical principles, we will be coming to a focus on actually using the material to train others. So you've got a lot of background, and then you get to the more practical type things. All right. See you all later.